Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Community Ties with Captain Navarro. I'm Captain Navarro. We're here today at the oldest house here in Wyandotte County, a mansion that's turned into a museum. Nestled in the intersection of South 78th Street and Call Drive, this place has a lot of history, including possibility and rumors of paranormal activity. So I'm going to go inside and talk to Eric, the curator, to see if those rumors are true. Come on in and join me. Hey, Eric. Hey, appreciate you inviting me here.
Absolutely, welcome.
No, yeah, I just came in from outside and this place is huge and it just looks, well, rustic, and I'm thinking, all right, it looks a little bit creepy, but there's more to it than what it's on the outside. Am I correct?
There is, yeah.
Okay, tell me first, what is your name and what do you do here? What's your title?
My name is Eric Smallwood, and I'm the site administrator here at Grinter Place State Historic Site.
Okay, cool. And how long have you been doing this?
Here, I've only been here since May, but I've been working in museums for about 11 years now.
Oh, all right. So that's kind of your passion then.
It is.
Okay, so you've been studying up on this place, huh?
I have been.
All right, well, tell me a little bit about this, and who are these folks behind me?
So the Grinter house here was built, they started construction in 1857, about 4 years before Kansas becomes a state. And then when it was built, it was one of the largest structures built by the Lenape Delaware here on the reservation. At the time, that was still part of the Delaware Reservation. Moses and Anna Grinter, behind us here, are the ones who lived in the house. They had a total of 10 kids throughout the time they lived here in Kansas, and they're some of the first permanent settlers that arrive out here about 25 years before the Kansas-Nebraska Act opened it up for everyone else.
Wow, okay. Why specifically this area here on the Paul Drive?
So where the house is built today, at the time was a much busier roadway even than Caw Drive. This was a part of a larger road network that connected Fort Leavenworth with Fort Gibson and eventually Fort Scott. So military traffic, including payroll, mail, troop transports, etc., would have been going on a lot through this area. We're about 250 yards from the Kansas River, and Moses Grinter owned a ferry operation that was a part of that road network. So that's why they built their house here, closer to the ferry operation.
So Moses Grinter, was there anything else that made him successful other than the ferry?
Yes, so the river ferry came with federal contracts. The U.S. government paid contracts to Moses Grinter to run military and other government transports across the river, but he also made enough money off of that he built a grist mill and a sawmill. Both of those wash away in 1844, but he rebuilds them. He also owns a trading post for about 5 years, as well as a pretty lucrative hog farm here, pretty much where we are now.
Where are they from before they came here?
So Moses Grinter was from eastern Kentucky. He came from a slaveholding family. He was one of the first permanent white settlers out here, and he arrives as a federal employee as an interpreter working for the Department of Indian Affairs, which today is the Department of Interior, for the Kickapoo Indians, which were living in southwest Missouri.
Wow, okay, so Moses was an interpreter for
the Kickapoo Indian tribe.
Wow, really?
Yeah, so any contracts, any treaties, trade agreements, things like that, he would have been there to pretty much to translate between English or whatever other Indian language they were speaking with the Kickapoo language.
Sounds like they had a very successful lifestyle out here. So can you tell me a little bit more about his wife and their children?
Absolutely. Anna Marshall Grinter, she was the daughter of a white Indian trader and a full Lenape Delaware woman from northwest Ohio. She was living in close to where Sandusky, Ohio is today. She arrives out here around the same time Moses does as a part of the Relocation Act of 1831. So they arrive out here around about 175, 180 plus years ago.
Sure.
I don't know. I'm not good at math.
Sure.
So they arrive out here as a part of the Relocation Act, and they settle as the Lenape Delaware settle on this reservation, and they share that with Kickapoo, with part of the Kansas, and part of the Wyandotte Indians, which is why we get the county's name today.
Okay, so there was some sort of harmony here with all the settlers and the natives around here, would you say?
For the most part, most of the people living here at that time were all natives. Now, they were from other parts of the country. Even parts of the Delaware were separated in other parts of the country at the time. So they do kind of live in harmony, but they were all very different cultures, they had different languages, and they all shared the same land together here. 25 years later, the first white settlers start to come out, other than people like Moses Grinter or other federal employees. and that starts to kind of change the dynamic out here.
Okay, so how soon after that were there any? Did they move out? Were there any other families that moved in? Was this actually stayed in the family as a heritage?
So the family lives here. Moses and Anna live here until the end of their lives. When Anna passes away in the early 1900s, it gets used by some of their more distant family for about 35, 40 years, but the family sells it in 1950. The Hansen family from Nebraska, Swedish family, they buy this and actually make it into a fried chicken dinner restaurant for about 20 years, which is kind of what we're standing in here.
Wow. Okay, so this was a fried chicken restaurant here where we're standing.
Indeed, yeah.
Okay. So do you mind taking me to the other room so I can take a look around?
Absolutely. Let's go.
All right, great. Thank you. Okay, so that was an interesting room where we were just at. So can you tell me a little bit more about that room where we just came out of?
Sure. So that was originally the dining room of the home. It would have been accessible to the kitchen and as well as the room we're in right now. We have it set up right now to show how it could have looked in the 1950s and 60s when it was a fried chicken restaurant.
Okay. So how did it look prior to the fried chicken restaurant back in the 1800s?
So when people were living in here, it would have had more of a residential look to it. Upstairs were 3 bedrooms, and downstairs were the parlor, the room we're in now, and the dining room.
Okay, all right. So what is this room that we just entered?
So this room is kind of the entryway of the home, but based on how mid-19th century culture worked, it's likely that this was used as their sitting room, which is a little more like our living room or family room that we might have today. And that's different from their parlor because parlors are usually only used on Sundays, holidays, or for special occasions by religious families.
Okay, well, interesting. All right. Okay, well, let's go to the next room.
All right.
Okay, so now we're in another room in this mansion. To me, it kind of looks like a bedroom. Is that how you guys set it up? Is this what this is?
Right now we're standing in the parlor. This is the parlor of the home, and it's set up as it could have looked around 1900 to about 1910, around the time that Anna's in her last few years of her life.
So out of this entire mansion, you did mention that there's some kind of artifacts here that are originated from the Grinter family?
Yes, not many, but there's a few. Most of the furniture is original to the time period that we're representing, but there's only a few things we have that are actually from the Grinter family. And a few of them are actually here in this room.
Okay. Like, for instance, what?
So the table behind us here was owned by Anna and Moses. She would have bought that around the time Moses passes away in the late 1800s, around the same time that she makes this crazy quilt over here on the left as well.
Okay. So that's all from Anna?
It is, yeah.
Okay, cool. Anything else in here?
There's a couple other pieces. This cabinet over here on the left was given as partial payment to the Grinter family as a part of their ferry toll for a group that is traveling through on the California.
Oh, sorry. Is that you?
No.
That sounded like it was coming from the kitchen.
We're by ourselves, right? There's nobody else
Supposed to
here.
be.
There's like a clang, like a pops in, like a 2 pops. Okay. All right, that's weird. Okay. Sorry, you were talking about the china, the cabinet thing?
The cabinet here was traded as partial ferry toll payment to the family around 1851. That group was traveling to California on the California Trail, and it was used by the family for about 50 years in their kitchen before they retired it, which is why it's in here.
All right. Okay. Well, let's go to the next room. Okay. So this looks like a bedroom, but not just a bedroom. It almost looks like a children's bedroom. Can you tell me about this room?
So originally this was the bedroom of Moses and Anna. It was the main bedroom of the house. The other 2 bedrooms up here were shared by the boys and girls separately. But there are some children's things in here. We have this set up today as a parlor as it would have looked. Instead of the one downstairs, it's set up as it would have looked around the time they moved into the house in the early 1860s.
Interesting. Okay. And once again, the fireplace. Can you tell me a little bit more about their children?
Absolutely. They had 10 kids total.
10 children.
About 5, only 5 live all the way to adulthood. The others die of various accidents, diseases, etc. And of their children that lived through adulthood, their oldest son was killed about 25 years after the Civil War because of his service in the Civil War.
So their eldest adult child died after he came back from the Civil War because he fought in the Civil War.
Correct. He serves in the 15th Kansas Cavalry. That was a Union regiment. Despite Moses coming from a slaveholding family and being pretty pro-slavery in the 1850s and 60s, Quantrill's Confederate raiders come through twice during the Civil War and raid nearby farms, possibly this one. And after the second incident that happens, their oldest son enlists, William Harrison Grinter, enlists in the 15th Kansas.
And there was also other tragic deaths with their children here. Can you explain a little bit more about that?
A few other kids that died before they built this house, but they had 2 other children here that passed away from diseases throughout the
Here on this
60s.
property?
Somewhere on the property, yeah.
Okay. So there's rumors out there that might tie the tragic deaths here of this mansion, this house being possibly haunted. What do you think about that?
I've heard some stories of it. People do come and ask about it.
Okay. But you haven't seen anything yourself?
Nah.
Okay. All right. Interesting. So there was another individual that had passed away, but his body still lies here on property.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure, yeah. That is the grave of a man named Thomas Elliott. He was one of the employees for the Choteau Trading Post, which was down here at the intersection of Caw and Schwartz Drive. When they put that intersection in, I believe in the 1950s, they found the body, which was a common practice to do so, was buried in the roadway, actually in the middle of the road. That was pretty common to do because it was, if something had happened, it was already loose ground. It was already easy to dig up.
I did not know
nothing
that.
grew underneath on top of it, so it was a pretty good spot for temporary graves. When his grave was exhumed, it was going to be put up at the Grinter Cemetery up the road.
Right.
But the people living here offered to have it buried. Offered to have him buried here instead. And
Why
this
is
where he
that?
still lays.
What was so special about him that they wanted him buried on this property?
So I'm not real sure. That's kind of something I've been puzzled with as well. Now, his significance is that he was working for the famous Choteau family, which were kind of fur trade era tycoons. They were very, very wealthy. They were a French family, and they owned hundreds of trading posts all across the West.
So Choteau, that sounds familiar. Why?
I believe there's a Choteau Way here.
Traffic
in
Way,
Wyandotte
Choteau
County,
Traffic
yeah.
Way.
And it would have been from the same family. They're best known by a lot of their involvement in the fur trade. They're kind of the ones who are selling most of the items to a lot of the trading posts all over the West. And they're the people, or the trading post here where Thomas Elliott was working, were the folks who supplied some of Fremont's expeditions out west, which are pretty famous in the 1840s.
So Thomas Elliott's body, his grave, is here on site.
It is, yeah.
And it's open to the public to come and take a look?
Yep, yeah.
Okay.
And he died of cholera. There were a lot of pretty bad cholera outbreaks in the 1840s, and one of those went through here, which is what made him go.
Interesting. Okay, I'd like to go out there and take a look around.
Please do, yeah.
All right. These stairs are small.
They're the original stairs and original handrail.
I bet. Well, Eric, I appreciate your time. I had a great time. I learned a lot, and hopefully there's folks out there that will come and pay you a visit. We didn't cover almost half of anything.
Oh
here,
yeah, we didn't talk about very much of it.
Right, so I'm gonna leave it for everyone else to come and actually take a tour with you. Can you give them your contact information? How often are you open, and what's a good time to come out?
Absolutely. So we are open Wednesday through Saturday up until October 14th is the last day of our season. And then we reopen sometime in mid-April. All that can be found at the Kansas Historical Society's website or on the Grinter Place State Historic Site's Facebook page.
So please come on out and check it out. And don't forget this, on the 14th, October 14th, we're gonna be out here live. We're gonna go live, and they're gonna have some kind of festival here, right? Can you explain a little bit about that?
Yeah, so on October 14th, we have a Public Living History Day. We'll have vendors set up, and we'll also have living historians. Those are folks who are portraying or dressed in clothing from the 1850s and 60s, and we'll have different displays and booths and interactive exhibits for people to see out here as well. We'll be open 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. on that Saturday, October 14th. We're open an extra hour to get everybody in here.
Excellent. So look us up on Facebook, Kansas City, Kansas Police Department's Facebook. We're going to be going live here at the festival. All right. Well, I appreciate your time, Eric, once again, and I will see you on the 14th.
Sounds good. We'll see you then.
All right, bud. Take care.
You too.
All right. There we have it, folks. Another adventure with Captain Navarro. I'd like to thank the curator, Eric Smallwood, for inviting me out here. I learned a lot about this place, the Grinter House, and don't forget, we'll be seeing you out in the community. Is the Grinter house haunted? This is a question we did not intend to explore when we agreed to film at this location, only to promote local businesses and museums. But the question still remains and is still asked to this day. I only know of what we experienced while visiting the old mansion. While filming in one of the lower first floor sitting rooms, you can see in the video while I was interviewing the curator, Eric. Something grabs my attention and I turn around and I ask something to Officer Cheatham, who was behind me filming. She is clearly standing still and a few feet away from me.
Is that you?
Yeah.
That sounded like it was coming from the kitchen.
We're by ourselves, right? There's nobody else
Supposed to
here. Curator Eric continues his details about the room during this incident and did not notice our distraction until I asked him to pause. He then says he thought he heard something coming from the kitchen area, but didn't seem to think anything of it. I confirmed with Eric if we were truly alone in the house, so we brushed it off and continued with the interview. On review, the sound was not picked up from any of our mics. We then moved over to the kitchen area for the next scene. As Eric and I walk into the kitchen to our interview points, Eric does something none of us noticed at the time. You can see Eric here closing to what appears to be the front door of an old, rustic heavy metal stove. He can be heard murmuring, "That's not supposed to be open." We then go on with our interview as if normal business. Upon review of the audio of this scene during editing is when I noticed the sound that the door makes when shut by Eric. It sounded similar to the clink sound that I heard.
The Grinter family is part of their fairy toll for a group that is traveling.
What was that? There has been reports of apparitions dressed in early 1900s clothing walking around the property of the Grinter house. Perhaps residual, looking for the cold storage that is located on the property. And folks have said to have heard footsteps around the home when no one else was there. Is this the unrested soul of Thomas Elliot, whose remains were unearthed, then reburied on the Grinter house property instead of the Grinter cemetery? You can visit his gravesite located in the front yard. So is the Grinter house haunted? You have to see for yourself.